to the BAM Pod. All right, welcome in everybody to the BAM Pod. I'm your host, Big Ed, and on the line tonight, I have a man who just did a thing. He went out on the California Delta and brought home the big old trophy from the BAM Trail, along with that little bitty thing called $50,000. Bryant Smith, welcome into the show, man. Glad to have you on.
Thanks for having me on.
Now, this is awesome, everybody, because he got into his truck yesterday after winning this thing and drove all the way down to Mojave, Lake Mojave, and he is fishing the U.S. Open. So, we are very pleased that he was able to do this, took a time out of it. So we're going to make this a good show. You know, we talked just before the show, and I said, how many wins does that make for you? Big wins on the California Delta. And you know what? That was his first big win on the California Delta. And that's saying a lot because this guy is a heck of an angler. He goes out and fishes all over the place, all over the country. And he came to the California Delta and just flat out hurt Zach Thompson's feelings.
Yeah, I didn't mean to, but it worked out okay.
I really did feel bad for him, for Zach, honestly, because he's been right there. And it's like that's his home water. It's his neighborhood, and it's like, oh man, he's been
He's the
so
mayor.
close. He is, and he's been there. He's been so close, and this is day the whole cut it down to nothing and come back, and somebody's got to win, and he's been right there, and he's a heck of an angler, and he'll get his. It's coming, that's for sure. But Bryant, we're here to talk about you and how you went out there on the California Delta and did this thing. It was not the easiest of tournaments. Guys were struggling a little bit. Now, Marty Lawrence, broke that on the first day. He goes out and he catches these giant fish, and drops 26, was it 26? 26, I think, on the stage. And it was like, are you kidding me, man? That is a way to start this thing off. Everybody else was kind of like there at that point. But then you just stayed consistent, and you did what you had to do. Did you, I don't get to see, were you weight or were you keepers when you
I was keepers going
okay?
into the final day. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, there's, but there's no, that's the greatest part I think about the format that we run here on BAM is that you have that ability to make it, it's like, I'm not on the biggest ones, or you can save the big ones, right? For the last day. I mean, you dropped 27 pounds on the stage on championship Sunday, man. Let's
Yeah.
that's just crazy. Did you now
Yeah.
was that your whole plan the whole time is like I'm gonna go for keepers and then I'm gonna hold my big fish for the last day?
Absolutely not. I, I could make up this whole story and make it sound really cool. No, honestly, like I hadn't been there in 2 or 3 years, so I just kind of went fishing and whatever bit I was going to put it in the boat. And day one went good for weight, and I did catch. I think I caught 15 keepers the first day, so I was kind of comfortable in both spots. And then day two came along, and we didn't have the cloud cover and the great
Right.
conditions for catching him the way I did the first day. So I just kind of realized about 11 o'clock I need to just start catching keepers. That's going to be my best way to get into this. I was watching, we get to watch the Tourney X, and I was watching that. I'm like, these guys are catching too much weight right now for me to keep up. I need to just buckle down and try to just get bit by keepers and go from there. So I ended up getting in on keepers, and if you would have told me that if I got in on keepers I would catch 27 the next day, I would have told you you were an absolute liar, because going into the third day I was on nothing. I
Mm.
had one area where I wanted to kind of fish at a certain tide, and that was about it. Everything else, it was just kind of make it up as we go, and it ended up working out better than I could have ever dreamed.
I got to tell you, I wish you were the only guy that said that. But there were multiple guys that were like, when I was on the stage interviewing them and I say, what do you got going for tomorrow? You ready for this whole thing? And there was probably 5 or 6 guys who were like, no, I got nothing. It's I'm gonna go out and hit the water. And I feel like that's the way this tournament kind of shaped up and it ended up playing out was that it was one of those, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go fishing tomorrow because that's kind of what people had. I think not to bring Zach too much, but I feel like he was the only one that had a really good plan of what he wanted to do, and it just, unfortunately for him, it didn't plan out. But I mean, it was one of those things that I don't remember a lot of guys. I mean, Aaron Britt, same thing. I don't know. I'm going to go to an area I've never been to before. I'm going to go try this water. I hear it's really good.
Mhm.
Marty Lawrence, who had great weight, makes it in there. He's out there on championships. Had nothing left after day one, really. I mean, day two, he went way back down and kind of went back into reality mode. And then, I mean, you just had so many guys that just, were talking about what you're talking about. When we started this thing, it was a little bit of cloud cover. It was one of those days where the wind wasn't blowing crazy, which is, in the fall is kind of weird for the Delta, but there wasn't a big wind. It was just a nice day to go fishing. What did you focus on, and what were the baits that were kind of doing it for you on day one?
Yeah, no, if you could draw up a perfect day to go on the Delta when the water's still a little bit warm, that was day one. And that's why the weights really showed out. If you can get cloud cover on that place, and we had a really good tide as well, so that helps obviously too. But if you can get some cloud cover on that place when the water temp is above, 68 to 70, you're going to have a good day. The fish are going to be biting, they're going to be chasing. So that's kind of what I try to do. I try to see a lot of the delta. You know, with the no practice, you don't have an idea of what everything looks like. So I tried to see a little bit of the delta, and then on top of that, I just focused on a Strike King Thunder cricket. That was the player the first day. That's what I caught my big one on the first day. I caught quite a few keepers on it, and then I wanted to keep the flip and bite, punch and bite honest as well. So I kept Strike King Rage Bug in my hand too. When I saw matted grass or floating hyacinth, anything that looked like I could flip in there, and just kind of those were my two baits. I threw some other stuff here and there. I threw a spinner bait, threw some top water, but those were the two things that were really, really consistent throughout that day one. And those are the two baits that I have the most confidence in to catch a big bag along with a bunch of keepers. So I kept those in my hand majority of the first day and just tried to cover a bunch of water.
All right. Were you was there any big trick to what you were doing? I mean, were you flipping on braid? Were you flipping on mono? Were you flipping what is it that, that kind of made those baits stand out for you?
Yeah, so flip it. I was punching grass, so I do it with 50-pound braid, an alpha angler, mag hitter to get them out. Big flip and stick, and then a loose custom pro, and the whole thing is just being in the right areas at the right time. I may have not have
Huh.
fished there very much over the past 5 years, but I fished there a lot growing up, and I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of the tide and where to be when. So I relied a lot on that history, just so I put myself in high percentage areas at the right time, and that's the whole thing with the Delta is making sure you're you're kind of always around fish, I feel like, in the delta,
Hmm.
but there's certain times where they bite, and there's a lot of times when they don't bite. So knowing that and knowing, where I need to be with that flip it stick, that was the big thing. And then mixing in that thunder cricket, that vibrating jig along with that was really the key for me. But the tides were everything.
Okay. Now, you say you've got to be at the right place at the right time, and it is a tough one on the Delta. And understanding that, like you said, you hadn't been out there for about three, 3 to 5 years, and it's like, okay, so when you're looking at the tide out there, do you need to be looking ahead and knowing that, okay, I've got to be on this spot over here, which is 5 miles away, and I got to be on that spot when the tide hits maximum tide, it's maximum height.
Mm-hmm.
So are you looking at your graph? Are you reading and going, okay, I got to be there at 3:50. I have to be pulling up on that spot and starting to fish it. Is that what you're talking about when you say the right time or the right
Yeah,
place, right time?
yeah. It's not. I don't have it that fine tuned, but I have, I have the tides that I like, and I have the areas that I like particular tides for. So, the whole day, even before the tournament started, that was the biggest thing that I looked at was the tide chart. I wanted to know what the water was going to be doing throughout the entire system, and that's kind of what I based where I
Mm.
started and where I finished, and what I did throughout the day. It was all based on the tide. The best tide for me, when the water's warm, has always been that low switch. That's
Okay.
always when I've gotten a lot of big bites on a flipping stick, punching grass, punching the Eladia, whatever it is, coontail, everything.
Right.
That's always been my best tide. So I made sure that I was on, places I had a lot of confidence in around that low switch, and then I kind of fish around, fish that area. And then when that tide started to come back in, I'd switch up to the vibrating jig a little bit, and then I would just move after that. I'd spend another half hour after the switch, and then I would just move. I'd move further into the delta and kind of try to follow that tide in as best I could.
Okay.
And that's, it's more of a general thing for me. It's not super specific like you were talking about. I know there's guys that are really good and they can do that. Like I need to be here at 12:58, and if I'm here at 12:59, I'm not going to get a bite, like that kind of crazy stuff. But I just like to put myself in a general area with the right tide.
Okay. Were you this is this is a vast waterway. Anybody that, if you're listening right now and you don't know anything about the California Delta, it's massive. Like you just don't know. Um but we've broken it down to basically northern, central, and southern delta is kind of how it fishes for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you concentrated on?
I was around, so I started out west. I
Okay.
started in Big Break. I actually really like to fish Big Break, and it
Okay.
totally let me down the first morning. So I abandoned ship on that and went towards the central delta. And that's where I ended up spending a majority of my time and where I caught most of my weight. I went east a little bit on day 3,
Mm.
but for the most part, I was around that Frank's track, and all the, offshoots from that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think when people look at the Delta and they it's just one of those things. It's like, where do you start? I talked to Marty Lawrence a little bit when we were on there, and I go, this is, he's an Arizona guy, so he's down there. He's down there by where he lives, right down by where you're at right now, and he's like,
Mhm.
he goes, you get onto that water, you look at it and go, everywhere looks like there's a 10-pounder in every flip you would make, right? I mean, that's it,
100%.
and it's one of those things that one of the things that you said, I should say, is if you're in an area, there's always fish where you're at. And I heard this said so many times. If you get up there and you're catching small fish, the big ones are there. Like there's still big fish around the area you're in, more than likely. But if the small ones are biting, leave because the big ones aren't biting. Do you find that? Did you find that true? I guess in your tournament, that this one, I got to my spot and God, I was just getting keepers, but I wasn't getting anything big.
What the flock are you waiting for? California's newest luxury entertainment destination, Chicken Ranch Casino Resort, is ready to play. Experience laid-back luxury in our modern hotel, a casino floor with views of the Sierra, and diverse restaurants and bars that'll keep you squawking for more. Experience the all-new Chicken Ranch Casino Resort, located just 60 minutes from Yosemite National Park. Visit playchickenranch.com to book your trip today.
Hi, this is Josh McMurray. I'm the city manager for the city of Oakley. We're located on the Delta. We have a beautiful shoreline, and we really want to promote the city as the gateway to the Delta and showcase everything that we have to offer. We have a beautiful downtown that's expanding, brand new restaurants. What we're trying to do is build that brand to make sure that people know that you can come to Oakley and you can do everything that you want associated with the Delta, and you can still stay here, eat here, and have a good time in a very family-friendly and safe environment.
Yeah, this is the one time of year where that really doesn't hold true for me. It's more of a, I know I need to be here. I know there's big ones. And dude, I've flipped like a 8-incher out of one mat.
Wow.
And went to the mat 20 feet next to it and caught a 7-pounder. And this is that's that strange time of year where they kind of all mix together. Because normally, yes, absolutely. Like if you're catching small ones, it's probably not the right time to be there. So, but for this tournament, like there was many times where I would catch a, 8-incher, and then 5 minutes later I'd catch a 3-pounder. So it is one of those times where you kind of just gotta weed through the little ones, because this is just the time of year where those little ones bite everything that moves. Like I caught a pile of non-keepers, so you just had to kind of weed through them and trust that you were in the right area, trust that you were there at the right time, and hopefully you could connect with the bigger bites.
Yeah, it's looking at the Delta right now. This is also the time when they come out, and one of the things that they were really talking about was spraying. And I think they did it like right at the end of summer. I think that's when they kind of come out. They want to get that foliage when it is like going into hibernation, so it's starting to suck everything in. Everything out from the leaves starts going into the core, and they want to get that poison in there and get those things killed. And I talked to so many guys who were like, I didn't know if I would show up to my area and it would just be completely gone, or did they spray it? Did they not spray it? What are we looking at? Did that really affect your game at all? With the spraying anything? Did they get to what some of the areas you wanted? Did you have to make adjustments with that?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. One of my areas where I caught basically what got me to the top 10 day, I could tell that they had sprayed it at some point. Oh. And I think I was lucky enough to be there further along after they sprayed, so where that grass was actually starting to come back a little bit.
Okay.
So there was enough grass there to keep me interested in, instead of just like seeing it and saying, yeah, they nuked this spot, I'm out of here. There was enough grass there to like actually fish through it. And then I ended up, kind of figuring out, okay, they're here. They're just, yeah, the grass looks terrible, but there's enough grass here to hold the fish still. But I also, on the top 10 day, I spent probably an hour, because, it's the winner take all day. I spent probably an hour and drove around and tried to find an area that didn't look like it got sprayed. And I honestly, I never really found anything I was comfortable with. So I ended up just going back and fishing the same areas that I was. But yeah, that is kind of like a moving target, where we never really know where they're going to spray. We never know. And especially like with the no practice, even the guys that pre-practice it's a crapshoot whether or not it gets sprayed in that 30-day off limits. So you could have the most beautiful grass in the world before cutoff, and then the spray boats come out, they nuke your area, and all those fish are gone. So I just, I really got fortunate this tournament to where everything kind of worked out. I just picked the right area. There was enough grass there to make me stay there and just work through it.
All right, now we go on to, day 2, and per the Delta and per fall, things change. I mean, we go from this beautiful day, cloud cover. The wind didn't come up again. I was really, really surprised that we did not have any wind at all in the fall on the Delta this weekend. But it was a good thing. I mean, it a little easier to fish. Some guys probably wanted that wind. I don't know if you were one of them, but it's one of those things that when it's not there, then you kind of just get to fish a little slower, a little more methodical. And I think on day two, the biggest change that I noticed that a lot of guys talked about was the sun came out. It got high, it got sunny, it got warm. How much did that affect your game, and did it make you really switch up what you had planned on doing?
It did, absolutely. Yeah, I knew, at least for me, I don't have a ton of confidence in moving baits when it's flat, calm, and sunny like that. That is when I pick up a flipping stick, and I can go through those same areas that I've been catching them on moving baits, chatterbait, squarebill, whatever it was. And usually I can still catch some fish flipping the grass, flipping the mats, stuff like that. And I knew that day two, when I saw the weather, I figured I had maybe 2 hours in the morning to catch something on a moving bait. And then after that, I was going to have to pick up a flipping stick and just grind it out and try to catch as many keepers as I could. And it worked out to where I caught a couple on that thunder cricket in the morning, kind of calmed me down a little bit. And then I knew where I needed to be. I just needed to slow down with the flipping stick. And it was nice because we didn't have the wind. If we did have the wind, I probably would have thrown like a chatterbait or spinnerbait or squarebill, something like that. But without the wind, that's when I pick up the flipping stick, go through the same areas. It's a slower process, but I ended up getting enough keepers to get into the top 10, and that's the goal. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a really, really cool format in that sense, because I made two top tens before that, one at Don Pedro and one at Mojave, and both were on weight. And it didn't even like, it doesn't even, this is my first year doing this format, so it doesn't even cross my mind to like, yeah, I'm just going to go for keepers.
Right.
It's such a foreign thing for me, but I realized what was happening on day two. I realized, yeah, I'm probably not going to be able to depend on a big bite or two on a moving bait like I had the first day. So I'm just going to slow down, fish for keepers with a flipping stick, and it ended up working out.
There's your you're saying flipping stick, and I want to break that down a little bit. So we always hear about punching. Are you talking the same thing, or are
Yes.
you
Yeah.
flipping? Okay, so you're punching
Yeah.
most everything.
Yeah.
You're looking
Yeah.
for, and the other of that is when you're focusing on punching these mats, or are you looking for? Because there are, you can come around any corner and there's a mile and a half long mat, or you can find ones that are just small. Is there any one of those things, or are you looking for something in the middle? What are you trying to punch? Are you looking for something big, or are you looking for something small, or does it just like what matters to you?
Yeah, it's so if I'm flipping a mat, I ended up catching most of them flipping grass just because the tide was low. When that tide is low, I feel like a lot of them pull out of the mats,
Okay.
just because there's little to no water underneath them. But as the tide rises, then I start looking for mats, and I would rather fish more isolated stuff. It's always made more sense to me. I'd rather make two flips in a mat and start the engine and go and find the next one than flip down 2 miles of mat.
Yeah.
And try to find that needle in a haystack. So I always try to find the more isolated stuff, whether it's I'm flipping grass, punching grass, or if I'm punching a mat. Either way, I always like to find that a little more isolated stuff, just because I feel like my odds of getting a bite are much better.
Okay, when you're talking about, and I I look at this, and I've actually fished with Zach Thompson and watched him do it, and you flip these little. It's like the Delta has a ton of the whatever grass it's called, coontail, or hydrilla, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And is that what you're punching? Are you using the same thing, like a 1 ounce weight, and punching into those isolated clumps that are just kind of like all over the place in there, like the fish bury up in those?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Those
Okay.
those isolated grass clumps, I love those things because you only have to make one flip in them.
Okay.
That fish is either going to bite it or he's not, and we're on to the next. I don't have to sit there and pick apart an area. I can kind of just know if there was a fish there and the time was right, tide was right, that fish was going to bite. If he didn't bite, we go on to the next one, find the next isolated target. But yeah, I'm always trying to find those more isolated things, just because
Okay.
it's easier to target. And I feel the other thing is those more isolated mats, they don't get a lot of little fish underneath them, just because if there is a big one, that's her mat. That's her grass clump.
Yeah.
Like, no, an 8 incher is not going to go next and cuddle up next to an 8 pounder. It doesn't happen that way. So
Yeah.
I know when I'm not getting a bite under these mats, usually there's the isolated ones. There's bigger ones around, and I can really target those ones.
Okay.
Um, just easier.
Yeah, I think it's honestly it's such a weird thing to me when you see those, the water starts to drop, these big clumps of hydrilla are sitting out there and you're going, okay, and guys are flipping. The first time I ever watched Zach do that, I'm like, what are you doing? It's like so weird that to think that a fish would come out and bury himself up in that. And like you said, he's flipping and he makes like, I don't know, probably 4 casts on 4 different ones, and the fourth one gets a bite, and that's it. It's like it's a very interesting, very unique way to fish, but I think guys that understand the Delta, that's something that you just I don't think you see it all over the country.
No, you really don't. It's definitely a Delta thing for sure. It's just the way that body of water sets up to where there's a lot of, like, just the channels everywhere. So that grass can only grow out so far,
Right.
leaving a very distinct grass line along there. And then when that tide falls out and you get that really low water like we had in that tournament, that last clump, that isolated one off the edge of the main grass line, that's going to be the clump that fish is living in, because she doesn't want to go up and swim around in an inch and a half of water.
Right.
That's like the last stopping spot on low tide. So she's either out there swimming around with the sea lions or she's sitting inside that clump.
Yeah, that was actually something I heard guys are saying, hey, I didn't actually see any sea lions out there. Were you one of those? Did you see a bunch of them or did you not?
Um, I saw a handful. It
Oh, okay.
wasn't terrible. It's not like earlier in the year where usually
Yeah.
there's a lot more. So it made it a lot easier, because I hate fishing next to those things. I just feel like there's no way the bass aren't wary when a, like,
Yeah.
1,000-pound sea lion's just swimming around out there. Like, they got to get on guard and kind of hunker down a little bit more when they feel that big old thing swimming around down there.
Oh, absolutely. All right, now we are on Championship Sunday, man. You have got the same advantage everybody else. You're back to zero. Now, first I want to ask you, do you like this format? I mean, is it something that you are like, I mean, you won, so obviously it's got something a little there's something a little in there for you, but I mean, when you see that coming, you're like, man, I worked, you made it through keepers. Weight was decent on the first day. The second day, you're like, oh, I'm just going for keepers. I'm not looking at that. Is this format something that you can really grow with? The Super 60 format that we are running is very unique. And I think it's something that most guys are, I don't know, like on the fence with until some of the stuff you just said, like you just notice. It's like, you know what? I can make it a whole different way. Is that work
Yeah.
for you? And does this work for you going all the way back? And then at the end of it, you go back to zero. How does that all work for you?
Take the plunge and jump into new favorites at Black Bear Diner. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we've got you covered.
Good old-fashioned family food, Black Bear Diner.
I have really enjoyed it, because it adds a lot more layers to just your conventional tournament. We've always done 5 biggest fish, cumulative weight if it's multi-day, and off you go. But this way, it keeps you engaged the whole time. From the start. Like, what am I going to target right out of the bat? I'm on nothing. I'm just going to go try and get some bites, maybe let the day kind of unfold. And that's what I usually end up doing is, if I catch some better ones, okay, cool. We'll go for weight. Maybe I'll check the Tourney X and say, okay, yeah, I'm 30 keepers behind. Like there's no chance. I need to go and catch weight. Now I need to go focus on weight. Or, vice versa. I've caught 15 keepers the first day, like this tournament. I caught 15 keepers the first day. I'm not getting bit. Okay, let me make that change. So it just keeps you engaged the whole time. And it's a super fun format to fish just because of that. It's just something different. And then the zeroing on the final day, I had my reservations about that. Just because I've always been like the fisherman I've always been is I try to be as consistent as possible weight wise throughout 3 days. I never won a lot of 1 day shootouts. I 1 day tournaments, I maybe have won 5 or 6 in my life.
Right.
But I've won a lot of multi-day tournaments. So that multi-day, that cumulative weight always kind of fit my style and it helped me succeed. But in this tournament, in Ken Mott, he explained it. We were at the bump takes. He explained it the best. It doesn't matter how you get there.
Right.
The only thing that matters is that you are there. Day 1, day 2, like we all signed up under the same rules. We're all playing under the same rules.
Yep.
We all understand that. And however it ends up working out it doesn't matter in the end. As long as you get to championship Sunday, that's the goal. And then when the weight's 0, like that's really fun just because it's a total shootout.
Right.
And I feel like, guys have those reservations about it. Like he zeroed it. He would have won with the cumulative, but that's not the format. Like that's what we signed up for. And it makes it so much more exciting going into that final day, knowing that everybody is just clean slate. It's over. Whoever is the best today wins this tournament. So I really enjoy it. I really do. It's been a lot of fun to fish, and it's kept me kind of mentally engaged in a different way, which I think has helped my fishing, overall.
All right. There were maybe not whispers, but there were some things talked about. And I heard you say something, thanks for talking me into staying. You are down right now at the U.S. Open, and that is, you started today. Mark, I think, had to talk you in a little bit to sticking around to keep that $50,000 check you got in your pocket right now. Talk a little bit about that. It's a decision you have to make, when you're traveling as much as you are and that you're trying to make these next tournaments. What day was it that you were just like, I don't know, man, I got to get on the road?
Yeah, it was actually really, it was almost comical. So going into the tournament, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that I was down at at this tournament. I didn't want to be like me fishing on no sleep is just, I might as well not even be there. I'm just terrible. So I was very concerned about that situation. And then Mark was like, well, and I even asked Mark before. I was like, "Hey, can I like fish half a day and then leave? Would that be cool?" He's like, "No, you can't, because if you win, we need to take pictures with you." And I was like, "Okay, I mean, you're the man. I'm gonna, if I make it, I'll stay." So yeah, he really did. He really did talk me into it, and I had so many different scenarios going through my head. But it was funny on day 2, I had a number in mind for keepers, how many I needed to make the top 10. And when I got there, I was like, dang, I just lost so much sleep. But I do owe it to Mark because I was thinking about bailing, and then my wife was also, she was like, if you're gonna fish the top 10 day, Go fish the top 10 day. Don't worry about what's coming next. Worry about what's going on right now. So yeah,
That's some
it's
that's some sage advice right there. You know what? You just kind of gotta just tone it out and go do it, and just say, you know what, I'm doing it, and put tomorrow. You know, that's tomorrow's problem.
Yep, 100%. Yep, and that's, without her advice, I probably wouldn't have. I probably wouldn't have stayed. So it ended up working really well, obviously. But I'm glad I stayed. Even if I didn't win, I'm glad I stayed. Just, you got to focus on what's in front of you, not what's down the road.
But the good part is you did win, and you know,
Worked out
that
really
kind of
well.
works out really nice right there. You know, you gotta send the wife home with the trophy. But other than that, you know, you're good, and it's made up for you. And it's kind of funny that story comes up because I I had kind of a Aaron Britt walks up and he's wondering, he's sitting right there looking at Angler of the Year dead in the eye, and he's got to make just a certain amount. He's like, well, do I fish for Angler of the Year? He's like back there asking Thomas, you know, what are my points? Where am I at? How do I do it? Do I fish for Angler of the Year? Do I just fish for the win? I'm like, and I just looked at him, kind of rolled my eye, was, seriously? Why would you come to lose? Why wouldn't you go to just to win? If you win, you're going to win Angler of the Year, you know? And it's like,
Exactly.
and it's kind of like, you know, that right there that you're just talking about, where it's, you know, don't think about tomorrow. Don't think about, you know, whether or not you're going to get AOI. Just go do it. You
Yep.
know, but that's kind of where we're at, you know, in this sport right now. Is there's a lot out there to do. You're fishing one of the premier events right now. It's on Lake Mojave, where we were at earlier this year, and that's a good fishery. You know, for years you always hear, oh, a bass is a bass, and it's like, really, have you ever been to, like, I've never heard anybody say a river's a river, because when you go to Lake Mojave, oh, it looks a lot like the Delta. It's like, no, it doesn't. Not at all. I mean, it has toolies. That's it.
That's about the only similarity between
Yeah.
those two.
Yeah, I mean, that thing is, you know, it's a big body of water. It's got a lot to it. It's a good fishery. It's part of the chain down there, but it's so different. I thought it was so funny interviewing guys, and they're going, "Oh, I have these great glasses and I can see down with it." And it's like, I had no glasses, I could still see 40 feet.
It's
You
the
weren't doing
clearest
that.
water I've ever fished,
Oh my god,
by
you are
far.
not doing that on the California Delta.
No chance.
You better have
If
some
there
good
was
ones.
40-foot visibility on the California Delta, I'd probably never fish there. Those fish would
Right.
see you coming from a mile away.
All right. Let's wrap up the championship day. You know, now everything's changed. We're down to just this. You know, you've got 10 guys to go against. Was it the same baits? Was it the same everything? You just went out there and did it again and ran different spots, or did you have to change your game?
So it was similar. I didn't mix in the thunder cricket, the vibrating jig, very
Okay.
much, just because of the conditions. We had high sun, calm conditions that final day, and I knew the flipping stick, if I had any chance, I had to have that in my hand to win this thing. So I knew roughly where I wanted to be at that low switch we were talking about earlier to flip that grass. And I ended up catching three really good, solid keeper fish, like good foundation fish to start building a bag. And that was probably around 10 or 11. So I had two 3-pounders and then like a 4.5. And then I had a couple of, just squeakers, 14 inchers. And then after that, I kind of made it up as I went. I went to, I had no choice but to fish history. So I ended up fishing some areas. Obviously, I haven't seen them in a while. I was praying that the spray boats hadn't been there. Got lucky on one of them. Ended up flipping another 4. It was like 4.25, 4.5. So now I had 4 really good fish and a little squeaker. And then I was catching them out of the track. I would catch like 1 or 2 out of the track flipping grass the first 2 days. So, and one of them was a good one. And I was kind of fighting with either going back to Big Break because that tide was coming in. I could either go to Big Break where that tide would be further along, the water would be higher, or I could just go to the track and kind of see what happens, with that water being a little bit lower. But I felt like there was enough water to get them under some of the mats in some of the grass in the track. And I was driving down the San Joaquin, trying to figure out Big Break, Frank's, which way do I go? And I actually thought about is really, really special. I thought about one of the islands that me and my dad fished when I was 16 years old. I actually caught the biggest fish I've ever caught, 11 and a half pounder with him. Totally different time of year. But I was thinking about the pattern. I'm like, yeah, that might work. So I ended up driving over there, fished it, kept going down the bank a little bit further, and ended up catching, I think I caught another 4-pounder. So I'm at like 20. I'm right at 20, yeah, something like that. And then I ended up going down the bank a little bit further, like within eyesight of where me and my dad caught him that one time. And I flipped in there and I set the hook, and I thought it was a 5-6 pounder. It was a pretty crazy story. And this is kind of one of those stories where you can tell, like, it was just my time. Like everything went right. So I flip in there, I set the hook. It's like I thought it was like a 5-6 pounder, like really, really good fish, need this fish. And I get her out of the mat and I get her coming to me a little bit, and she says, absolutely not. I am going to the right.
Wow.
So in front of me was a little patch of like 6 or 7 tules. And of course, she is on the other side of those tules. So I'm pulling at the tules and I'm pulling her to the left. There was like a right angle in my line as I'm fighting this fish, trying to get her to turn around. And I still think it's like a 5-6 pounder. So I finally get her to turn around. I get her back into those tules, and all I can see is her tail. And she's got a clump of grass on her head. I truly believe if that clump of grass was not on her head, I would have lost that fish. When you get their eyes covered up for whatever reason, sometimes they just stay still. And my trolling motor, like, I was going at a like pretty even pace. So my trolling motor was on like 2 or 3, just going super slow. And it felt like an eternity, but I'm trolling motoring over to this fish. And I tried to turn it up and it just didn't work. So I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to hold pressure. And I got about 10 feet before I get to her. I'm going to have one shot at this fish because the boat is going to go right over her. So I get over top of her. I reach down, and thank goodness she had her mouth open. I didn't care what part of her I grabbed. I knew I was going to grab something, and I was going to give it the gorilla grip when I did. I grabbed her mouth, and the first thing I said, I had an observer, the first thing I said to him, like, that is not a 5 or 6 pounder. And I pulled her out. And, but yeah, that was after I caught that one. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be really tough to beat, and I think it's my time to win this thing. Because when like, I should have lost that. Like, if I'm not going to win that tournament, I would have lost that fish 6 times. So whenever everything goes right, when it's your time to win.
Yeah, I always love to hear that, because I feel like people really understand that it's like when it's your time to win, it's your time to win. And I hear people say it over and over and over again. And it's a true feeling I think you get, when that,
It is.
it's there. You mentioned one right thing in there, you had an observer. An observer is something new that we've been doing out here that Mark started this year. Didn't have it last year. What do you think about that program?
We're going to take a short commercial break and talk to you about one of our great sponsors, StoreQuest Self-Storage. They're here to help you get your garage back. As an outdoor enthusiast, you have gear, lots of expensive gear, equipment, boats, trailers, and vehicles, probably all stored in your garage. You need a storage space that's easy to access, secure, and climate controlled. And that's where StoreQuest comes in. Head over to storequest.com. Plus, members receive an exclusive 10% discount with the offer code BAM10. That's BAM 10. StoreQuest is the official self-storage partner of the BAM Tournament Trail.
It's the moment when everything is on the line and precision, power, and control make all the difference. A moment over 20 years in the making, anchored on loyalty, trust, and support that goes beyond all expectations. A relentless pursuit of perfection. All born from a revolutionary idea to help you rule the water. Power Pole.
Absolutely loved it.
Okay.
I had, oh gosh, I can't remember his name.
That's all right.
I feel like
we'll
a
just,
jerk.
We'll just call him Observer.
Yeah, he was a 25-year-old kid, fishes the kayak stuff. It was so cool because like he's ate up with fishing, and I swear he got more excited when I caught a fish than I was. But it was such a cool experience to have him in a boat on a really, really special day for me. You know, being able, like, it's cool when you're out there by yourself to have a special day, but when you get to share it with somebody, that makes it even better. And, you know, it was awesome to hear, you know, he said, man, I learned a ton. Like, you totally changed the way that I think about the Delta. I really appreciate everything. You know, obviously, you know, as I'm going through things, I'm explaining what I'm doing. You know, he wants to get better at fishing. That's, you know, I'm going to do what I can to help him with that. But yeah, it was super cool to have an observer in the boat with me and share that day.
Well, then let's hope Mark Lasane's listening, and you know, to when he listens to this show, and you know, and maybe keep that program around for the next couple of years. You said right in there the experience, and I'm going to take you all the way to the stage. You walk up on that stage, Zach's waiting for you. You drop 27 on there. You know, there are. I mean, it's, you know, you drop that's a big bag on that day. Just a big bag any day, but it's a big bag on that day. You get this thing done and you get the win. Mark does something a little interesting. He walks over and grabs your dad, Ben, gives him that trophy and says, hand this off to your son. How did that feel, man? What was that? You know, you're just talking about this story about, you know, this spot that your dad took you to, and this all these years ago that you fished, you grew up on this thing. What was that right there for you?
Oh, that was, man, you get me all choked up. What the heck? That was probably the most special part of that day because you know, my parents, they did everything that they possibly could to support me in this dream. And man, it was just really an incredible full circle kind of story where, you know, he and my mom would take me out to the Delta, you know, as much as we could, and we'd go fish. And, you know, I learned that body of water with him fishing with me. And for him to, yeah, I almost lost it when I saw he was the one going to hand that trophy to me. That was incredible. And I really appreciate Mark for doing that, because for it to all come full circle like that, that was a moment I will never forget for the rest of my life.
All right, man. Bryant, I'm going to let you get off to bed. I know you have got a big day tomorrow. You had how are you doing down there right now? I mean, day one, what'd you do on the U.S. Open?
1795. So we got a good start. Good start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, man, thank you for doing this interview. We really do appreciate it, coming on, giving us your time. I know you've got to, you know, a lot to focus on tomorrow, but get out there and do it. Hope you have the great success that you had up here. And thanks again for doing this, man.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ed, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Everybody, that was Bryant Smith. He's the champion of the California Delta on the BAM Trail. If you didn't get anything out of that, go listen to it again. All right, we'll see you in the next show. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.